teams here now, all trying to find a route into a cave system that's many miles long. The first foreign assistance has arrived in the form of these US Air Force rescue specialists. The focus outside the caves was on trying to drain them. Inside though, the entrance, which had been dry 2 days ago, was a torrent. British cave experts have started their search today, but even if they do manage to find a way in here, there's no way of knowing whether this is where the boys and their coach are trapped.
How many of you? 13. Brilliant. Monday. Okay, so 1 week and Monday. You have been here 10 days.
While a massive pumping effort is reducing it in the first section of caves, it's having less effect deeper in where the boys are trapped. Supplying the boys is a long and exhausting job, involving dozens of Thai and foreign divers. It was while returning from laying down those extra tanks that Saman Gunan, the 38-year-old former Navy diver, became unconscious and died. Now he's being flown back to his hometown, to a hero's funeral.
Getting them out one by one involves them walking, wading, crawling, and for long periods diving. One hole narrows to around 15 inches, so they have to squeeze through on their own.
Operation have been waiting to see. We saw 2 ambulances go into this hospital earlier. That's another. The boys are coming out. There are 9 more still in the caves, but this first day went better than many had feared it would.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction. So I've been caving and cave diving for over 35 years, and I've been attending cave rescue incidents for quite a large portion of that time. Hopefully, in the next few minutes, I'm going to try and share with you some of those experiences and give you an insight into the problems we faced and the solutions we found during the Thai cave rescue. So the Tham Luang cave is located in northern Thailand, at the base of a large range of jungle-covered mountains. When it rains, those mountains funnel the water underground, and it emerges later as a raging torrent in the cave entrance. On the 23rd of June, the Wild Boar football team ventured into the cave and were unfortunately cut off by floodwaters. When they were reported missing, the local police set in motion what was initially a small-scale search incident. So this gives some idea of the conditions inside the cave soon after the team became trapped. As the rescue progressed, this passage became completely flooded, and the floodwater in fact backed up throughout most of the cave. Like any incident, there was an escalation process. As different teams were called and they were unable to make progress, the incident was escalated up a chain of command, and eventually it kind of landed at the Thai Navy, and they decided to send some special forces divers. The problem was, whilst all these experts were experts in their field, they were excellent divers, they weren't cavers, and they were unable to make any significant progress. This was kind of the first turning point in the incident, where the incident commander decided or realised that he needed cavers, he needed cave divers. And he took the very brave decision to ask for outside help. He asked for subject matter experts. There's considerable precedent for cavers managing cave rescues, and there are considerable examples of when that's not happened, how the outcome has been quite negative. In South Africa some years ago, there was an incident where a gentleman called Peter van Hoezel, he was a cave diver and he went into a cave just west of Johannesburg. When he didn't come out, the police decided they were going to manage the incident on their own. And unfortunately, 3 weeks later, when they finally let cave experts in, Peter was found sat on a sandbank that he'd starved to death. So my hobby, my passion, is exploring underwater caves. I've done it for a number of years, and what I mean by that is understanding how a flooded cave has been mapped and what happens at the end of that cave, why the explorer chose to stop at that point. It's then a game of trying to solve the problem, to either build equipment or come up with procedures so that you can carry on beyond that known point and continue mapping the cave. I'm also a member of various cave rescue organisations, but I also have a day job. Business as usual, I suppose you would call it. Large-scale cave rescue incidents are hopefully like major IT incidents. They're hopefully few and far between. But when they do occur, there's a need to have a plan which is clearly understood and is ready to go at a moment's notice. This gives you some idea of the volume of equipment that a single diver might expect to take on a rescue. Given that I had about 2 hours notice from being at a meeting in work to being on the road towards Heathrow, it will be quite a tall order to produce all this equipment and document it and have it ready without some kind of set of procedures. We also have to have a lot of information. Airlines and pilots are notoriously wary of diving gear, and turning up at an airport with this sort of pile of stuff without appropriate certificates and safety data sheets and so on will just result in not being allowed on the plane. As I look back at some of the photos that came out of Thailand, whenever I was photographed, there were two things that struck me. The first thing was my sunny disposition, because I love reporters so much. And the second thing was that I usually have a blue folder under my arm. And that is the paper copy of our procedures. I kept that on me mainly as a reference. This was a rescue with a happy outcome, but sometimes we get called to incidents with a much less happy outcome. And when there's a fatality involved, we need to make sure that we maintain a chain of evidence and that we collect all the information that's required by the local law enforcement, because quite often the cave becomes a crime scene. When we arrived on Wednesday evening at the cave, we descended in what appeared to be utter chaos. I think I would have to describe it as something like Glastonbury Festival, but a bit more sombre. We had great difficulty in understanding the command and control structure, understanding where we fitted in. We were called out by the Ministry of Tourism, but when we arrived on site, we found that the military were controlling the diving. It was clear that the incident was being run along similar lines to when the children first went missing. So you had an incident that involved perhaps tens of people that had now escalated to thousands, and the command and control structure just hadn't been able to keep up with the change. Arriving at a similar time to us were an American pararescue group. They deployed from Okinawa. They brought divers with them, but crucially, they brought logistics people, they brought communications, press officers. And whilst we struggled perhaps initially to understand the Thai Navy and they struggled to understand us, the Americans we had a much stronger bond with. We perhaps had a lot more in common, we shared a sense of humour, we shared a similar outlook just on life really. And that alliance was absolutely crucial for us getting the resources we needed to begin pushing into the cave and subsequently led us to find the children. Whilst the Americans arrived with a 40-strong group, communications again was their strong point, the British still had a very meagre deployment of 3 people. So our communications infrastructure was a bit less salubrious. Communications, however, had become absolutely key to us. This is the incident commander, the governor of Chiang Rai. Once the children had been found, he made it very clear that what he was looking for was a zero-risk option. We'd been identified as subject matter experts, we'd cemented that by finding the children. Our job now changed to explaining that the do-nothing option would absolutely result in 100% fatality. As cavers, we understood that the children simply could not remain in the cave for an extended period of time. It was also our job to come up with a plan that was both feasible and also palatable to the incident commander. The way we set about doing that was to break the plan down into its constituent parts and then to rehearse those parts individually and demonstrate that each was possible. We understood we were proposing a high-risk plan, but we also understood that it was the only feasible plan. So initially, we were able to requisition a swimming pool. Now, generally, you can't buy cave diving gear that's suitable for small children. It's not an activity that's generally recommended on the primary curriculum. So we had to essentially scrounge what equipment we could from the various organisations and navies that were there and modify it so that it was suitable for children. We also managed to enlist some volunteers from the local Thai swimming club. We enlisted some boys and we dressed them up in the equipment that we would take into the cave, and we were able to test both the equipment and test our procedures. That gave us the confidence that we could actually do what we said we could do, but also it began to give the leadership confidence that this plan that we were proposing, although we're saying it's high risk, they can now visualise it, they can see it working, and they're beginning to think, maybe this is something that would actually work. In an ideal world, simulation is better done ahead of time, and we do practice cave rescue, but some of the techniques that were required on this rescue were somewhat unprecedented and needed considerable refinement. The other thing that was required was a fairly complex choreography within the cave. So we needed different people to be at different places at different times with a fairly large number of different pieces of equipment. The way we addressed that was to break the cave into 9 sections, or chambers as we called them. And then we were able to identify who should be where and when. And to simulate this, again, this looks kind of crude, but we had 1 chair per chamber set out in the car park and a line between chairs to actually pretend to simulate the cave. We also had water bottles to pretend to be diving cylinders, with blue representing air and green representing oxygen. Over a period of a few hours, all of the divers involved were gathered together and were able to rehearse repeatedly the actions they would take, the order they would enter the cave. They began to be able to visualise who they would see, who they would pass as they were in the cave. And we all had a very good idea of exactly what was going to happen as we proceeded. It was this final simulation that ultimately convinced the incident commander to give us the green light to proceed and begin extracting the children the next morning. One of the golden rules of cave diving in very low visibility is that you always have a line, so you can see the white line entering the water from the bottom of the screen. So our procedure required that we had a feedback loop to take information back into the cave as the children were coming out. This was a way of us providing a safeguard so that if we needed to modify our procedures during the extraction, we had a way of sending information back into the cave. What that meant though was, in zero visibility, two divers would have to pass each other on the line. So to give you some idea, the visibility was similar to swimming in coffee or swimming with your eyes closed. And as you were swimming along holding the line, when you bumped into something solid, it was probably the roof. And when you bumped into something squishy, it was probably a teammate. It's quite important, therefore, to make sure that the people you're with understand you and that they've got your survival as crucially in their mind as you have. So when you have to pass each other on the line, it takes quite some patience, quite some dexterity, and also you have to bear in mind that if you're carrying equipment, the other person is probably carrying a child. We also needed more divers. Although we had sent for reinforcements from the UK, we realised that we needed more capable divers. And for various reasons I won't go into, the military divers were unable to help us. We found a group of cave diving instructors who had journeyed up from southern Thailand and had offered their help. And we decided over a period of days to give them more and more increasingly difficult tasks, increasingly further into the cave, to try and build confidence in them and for them to build confidence in us. And whilst some of those decided that this wasn't for them, those that remained, such as Mikko, Klaus and Eric, became integral part of our team, and they functioned as one as we began to extract the children. Whilst we were focused on the diving, the wider command and control structure had most definitely caught up. From those initial days of chaos, there was a lot more order now, and the structure had clearly become teams within teams, with the divers focused on the diving, and all of the other teams, the medical teams, the rescue teams, the fire teams, whether they were carrying, whatever their role was, it was clearly defined. And by the time we reached the day that we were due to extract the children, everyone knew exactly what their role was, and again, where they needed to be, and where that was going to happen. As part of our larger deployment, our expanded team, we also brought out some rescue controllers. Their job in the UK would be to manage the whole cave rescue. In Thailand, it was really to track our progress, detail exactly what we were doing, and then coordinate with the other teams in the main command and control structure. By the time we came to it, the extraction of the children proceeded largely as planned. We had billed it as a high-risk operation, we had billed it as the only operation. By the second day, by the end of the second day, when we brought out 8 of the children, in our terms we had 8 for 8, 100% success, the mood in the camp had changed, the attitude of the commander had changed, the attitude of the military had changed, and most people considered it a done deal. And from our perspective, that was quite a dangerous viewpoint. The risk had not diminished. In fact, it had probably increased. All of the divers were tired, and also it had been raining for about 24 hours. So there was significant risk all the way through the operation, and from our perspective, that added pressure. The plan had been proved, and any failure of any one diver would specifically now be down to that individual. There was no longer any room to claim that the plan didn't work, because we demonstrated it worked. So on the last day, there was a lot of pressure on each individual. After any incident, as you would expect, there were a significant number of reviews at a significant number of levels. To my surprise, a lot of the reviews from a lot of the organisations focused on cave diving training. I guess it's an easy thing to focus on, especially if you have an organisation with divers that weren't able to assist or perform the role that was wanted. But from my point of view, I think the key takeaway is about subject matter experts, because you can bet your life that the next incident won't be a cave diving incident, it'll be something completely different. I'm going to finish with this shot. This is a photo of the 12 boys. It was taken about a week ago at a party the King of Thailand threw in their honour. You can see the Americans are in the background, the pararescue guys. Ultimately, this was a success story. And I think it was a success story because at the right time, the leadership were prepared to ask for help. And then, again, they were prepared to take a calculated risk when the time came. I also think it was down to unprecedented levels of teamwork and cooperation at every level. And I'm still humbled to have been a part of this. So thank you for listening.